This is 1967.
Now the war is coming. 1967 Shat Chirum. We get 2 notices from the American embassy. War is imminent. Transportation will not be provided. No responsibility will be taken. Leave the country immediately.
7.
We have 2 Americans, 1 Canadian, 1 Brit. So at the telegram, all 4 of us. What should we do? Should we stay or should we leave?
This letter that we sent was before letter to Haman. And they went to the post office to send the telegram to the Rebbe. And the Lashon was Eichli Snaig Leira Matzah.
What's going behind the scenes is that American yeshiva boys were clogging the airports trying to leave the country. And it was very bad for them around the country. And the Rebbe knew that. And that's why his telegram to us was printed in Daf Rishon of newspaper. And the telegram read as follows. Yamshichu b'hatmado b'shkida ובוודאי לא ינום ולא יישן שומר ישראל ויבשרו טוב. I had friends in the mirror, and I told them the Rebbe's telegram. So they asked Chaim in the mirror, should we stay or should we go? He said, that's not a question for me. I'm not taking responsibility for your lives. And they said, our friend in Chabad, the Chabad's Rebbe took responsibility for him. He said, don't move. He said, the Lubavitcher Rebbe had greater places. He just took responsibility for thousands of lives.
Yeshiva was about 200 feet from the border. Across the street, where the barbed wire and Jordan. That the government asked that we can help for the war effort. They asked that we should go help with trenches next to the border. Trucks came with sand. They dumped it on the corners of the streets. That we can go and fill up the sacks with sand, put it in the windows. So when the bombs fall, the shrapnel shouldn't break the glass and go into the houses. After the yeshiva was one more building, was Misad HaChinuch, a very big, strong building over there. And they shared a backyard with the yeshiva. And there, in that backyard, they soldiers set up mortars to shoot across the border. And they were there a few days before the war started. They were setting up the things with the bombs and everything to get ready. So they gave all of us rifles and submachine guns, and everybody got an Uzi. They taught us how to take it apart and put it together. If they break through, you just stand by the window and you just shoot anything that moves outside. Just keeps ripping the street with the bullets.
Before Shabbos, before the war erupted, Parshat Bamidbar, the Rebbe spoke by the Farbrengen that the commandment of Tefillin brings about God's blessing to protect the Jewish people from dangers around them and to bring long life to the Jewish people. Therefore, the Rebbe asked in these tense days, everyone should try to put on Tefillin with as many Jewish people as possible. Our sages tell us on the passage of the Torah that says that all the nations of the world will see that the name of God is called upon you and they will fear you. The sages ask, where do we see that the name of God is called upon you? The answer, this is the Tefillin Shabbos.
אז הרבי דיבר שכשיוצאים למלחמה, השם רוצה שהאויב יסבג לגמרי, וגם כי יש את העניין של נפקד ממנו איש. אחד הדברים מסוגלים מאוד לדבר הזה, זה יש את העניין של תפילין. אז הרב ביקש שיניפו עם חיילים תפילין, שזה יהיה להגנה על חייהם, הגנה על תמונה.
ורוב כולם וורס כשם אשר נקרא לך, המזכר das geht jüdische Zoll, wo sehr Anführer ist, an die Schemmeleke Zweis. Is unter dem Prior wie Mekka, der schreckt man sich versehen. Wir nussen mit Palecha, beschäfer, trocken, man bleibt versehen. Der Tatsche Genege der See, ist Chocha viele, was sierlich Hose, ist Maslaru Hose. Der See, das aber sein Magische Baschonaim, und schluckt sich nicht und bleibt.
אז כמובן שכל אחד עשה ככל יכולתו, וזה לא היה מאורגן, אלא כל אחד מצא תפילין, לא ידענו על מצא זה בכלל לפני כן, לא היה דבר כזה.
Right after Shabbat, the words of the Rebbe were spread throughout the whole world. But from Sunday morning on, Chabad Hasidim around the world began the Tefillin Campaign.
החלו חסידי חב"ד על פי הוראת רבי מלובביץ' במבצע תפילין. הם יצאו לרחובות לשכנע את ההורים ושבים להניע תפילין כדי להציל את העם ולהטיל אימה על אויבינו.
מבצע מוקד החל באותו בוקר שהיה ברור סופית שהולכת להיות מלחמה. מתכנסת הממשלה ובעצם מקדמת את פני הרעה. יוצאים המטוסים למתקפה של מבצע מוקד, פוגעים ב-430 מטוסים מצריים בסיני ובתוככי מצרים, בירדן, בסוריה. אחרי המתקפה הזאת שנמשכה שעה ו35 דקות, חילות האוויר של הערבים לא קיימים במתחילה המערבית. הירדנים מפגיזים את ירושלים.
Monday morning, when the Jordanians started bombing, the soldiers of the Hatzvi, so their commander or their head, whatever, his name, and Yossi was the locksmith from Tel Aviv. Oh, but the vacation, the film, you must have brought film. I remember we saying Krishma or Shmanas, whatever he was down, where the bomb started flying, I didn't punch. When it's filmed in the Davening, at the bombs fly, you down.
כבר במהלך המערכה ראינו את מבצעי ההנחת התפילין בהרכב וולף. אמר לי, נוסעים לסיני, אתה בא? אני נסעתי כי רציתי עוד אולי כתבה מפה, כתבה משם. נסענו לכל מיני מקומות. טנדר מרופט, שאני לא יודע מאיפה נלקח, כן אישורים, לא אישורים. נסענו, פתאום רואים חייל עומד מחכה לטרמפ, הנחת בו תפילין. לא, הניחו לו תפילין. תמשיך בהצלחה בדרך.
זה גאים מתנתקו, בשם הוואי וקיינו נדגה, בטוב מביסגוון אונגשלים, ניקה נכה בקיינים, הוואי, קייט מנחת משם הוואי, zusammen wieder sie, נקרא לך durch הדוחס תפיל, למעלה שליחוסם הקדש להגון, על ביטוחן von ארץ הקיינים, ביטוחן von גיא קודש וגפין sich in ארץ הקיינים.
Israel, roughly the size of New Jersey, was surrounded by an Arab world 50 times its size. But in 6 days, the war was over.
It's the first time in 19 years that Jews have been allowed to visit and pray at the site of the sacred Wailing Wall.
הפחד הכניס את מקומו לתחושה של שמחה והרגשת תחושת נס גדול והצלה. המונים באו לכותל, אלפי אנשים. אז פנה אלינו רב שרוי לייבוב, שהוא היה מנהל של ציר אגודת חב"ד, והרב דרש לנצל את האפשרות הזאת להניח עם משהו יותר אנשים תפילין. הרב לייבוב בן מברק מהרב, ועכשיו צריך עוד להגביר את מבצע תפילין, הרב הוסיף עכשיו, כיוון ששוחרר הכותל המערבי, להקים שם דוכן, והנחת תפילין לאלה שלא הניחו תפילין במשך היום, ובאותו דוכן הניחו אותם תפילין. אז גמד ושופמן דוכן קטן ואני להניח תפילין.
Das mit tut nicht Hotel mit Friseur, da wir wissen sein, dass Leben gesagt. How that the knowledge that Ziva, for the Volk, that was Haini was now sein, a Dover am Sky, Visa, full and Nishan, was not saying of a day.
זה היה מדהים לראות את זה, אנשים שחזרו למקורם, ראו בחיות, ממש הכניס בהם רוח חיים. אז הם הגיעו לממדים של אלפי אנשים ביום, יכולים לבוא ולהניח תפילין. It was a rare event in Jewish history. The 6-day war caused a tremendous amount of excitement in the Jewish community all over the world. What happened to mark it in terms of a daily life, except the tefillin? It became such a thing that if you want to visit the Kollel, you have to put on tefillin.
Right, thanks. Yossi, we actually mentioned you in the video. Yossi from Tel Aviv. That was the Gemara that we just learned over here, that the Jews had Vikar Elu Tefillin. The honor that they received from the nations was the Tefillin, and as it says in the Gemara over here, V'ro Kolami Eretz Kishem Hashem Nikrei Lecha V'Yarim Yimeka. People of the earth will see that Hashem's name is on you, and they will fear from you. And these are the Tefillin Sheberush. So putting on Tefillin brings tremendous blessing and respect from all the Jews, towards the Jews from everyone in the world. We'll do a little bit of the Gemara over here today, and then we'll continue with a little bit with halachas l'maisa about the idea of Tisha B'Av. So Amar Rabbi Chanina bar Papa. Says Rabbi Chanina, the son of Papa. Darash Reb Shila ish kfar Tamarta. Reb Shila from the village of Tamarta. There's Reb Shila from the town of Tamarta is actually mentioned throughout Shah several times. Wherever he's mentioned, he's usually saying something of a gadata, a homiletic interpretation. Tamarta is a small town. It's in the in Judea. And nowadays, there's right next to where Tamarta was, there's a small Israeli town called Timrat. And there's several Reb Shelas, but this is Reb Shela of Tamarta. And he says, Kol Ashiras Kulan Nichtavis Ariach Agabe Levena, Ulevena Al Gabe Ariach. There are 10 songs, 10 in the Torah. Most of them are written in such a manner. For example, here's Az Yashir. Usually the Torah is written just lines across the entire way, unless you have a paragraph break. Over here, let's say Az Yashir, this is the song of the sea. When the Jews crossed the Yam Suf, the Red Sea, and Hashem split the sea for them, and they sang a song to Hashem. And in the Torah, it's written in a very unique way. It's written not as straight lines, but it's actually a wider column than any other column. And it's written as a brick over an empty space. That's what it calls it. It calls each cluster of words a brick. And on top of it, under it is empty. So that's how, in general, Az Yashir is written. That's how most of the songs in the Torah are written. They're written in a very poetic, in a very unique, special way. So, for example, this is Az Yashir. Except for, and the Gemara will bring several exceptions. Chutz mishirazu. Except for, in the Megillah, where we list the 10 sons of Haman, they're actually written, it's called to be a song, and they're written one on top of the other. So this is what the Megillah looks like, the column of the 10 sons of Haman. Page before of the Megillah, it's all plain text, plain words. Where the 10 sons of Haman are, it's all piled up one on top of the other. We have a Megillah that the Rebbe Maharash wrote. I think there's actually 3 of them around, one in the Rebbe's library, one someone in Crown Heights has, one a relative of the Rebbe Maharash has. And the Rebbe Maharash wrote several Megillahs, and he was young. Doctors told him he should be occupied with his hands just for like therapeutical purposes. So he wrote several Megillahs, he wrote several Sefer Torah, he built many different things. There was a beautiful chandelier in Lubavitch, a wooden chandelier, which was carved with a lot of intricate carvings made by the Rebbe Maharash when he was a child. And if you go today into the Rebbe's room in 770, so next to the Rebbe's table, the Rebbe's desk, there is a small round table that was also handmade by the Rebbe Maharash. And so in his Megillah, you also have the 10 sons of Haman. However, interestingly, when the Rebbe Maharash wrote his Megillah, there's 2 methods of how to write the 10 sons of Haman. One is that it should be in its own column, like this. When the Rebbe Maharash wrote it, he made it just at the top of a column. They're one on top of the other, but doesn't take up the entire page. And there's different methods, different reasons for it. But this is the way the Rebbe Maharash, this is the Megillah that he wrote. So in the Megillah, when we list the 10 sons of Haman, they're listed one on top of the other. The 10 sons of Haman, they're listed. This is after the Jews had joy and feasting and gladness. And then when it came finally to the month of Adar, it's a days that the decree against the Jews is supposed to take place of destruction. And the Jews gathered together and they fought back against their enemies and they killed all their enemies. Throughout the kingdom of Achashverosh, they killed 75,000 people. And in Shushan, the capital, they killed 500 people. 500 people. Including, or in addition to the 10 sons of Haman, which are Karshandasa, Dalfa, Naspasa, Peirasa, Adalia, Aridasa, Parmashta, Arisa, Arida, and Vayazasa. He killed the 10 sons. Aseres. Killed the 10 sons of Haman. So, since it's part of the miracle of Purim, it's written as a shira, it's written in such a way. Says the Gemara, so the 10 sons of Haman, together with the word Aseres, are written as, the word Aseres is written as part of a special shira, special column. And he says, because of that, because it's written all together, he says an interesting halacha, sarich limemrinu. Sorry, just we skip 2 lines of the Gemara. The 10 sons of Haman, which are written in the Megillah, and the word Aseres has to be said in one breath by the Bal Koirei. He has to take a big breath. He has to say all of these 10 sons. He has to read the entire thing all in one breath. Why? My time, what's the reason he has to read it all in one breath? Kulu bahadi adadi nafka nishmasayu. Because the 10 sons of Haman, they were all killed at once, at the same time, and they were all killed in the time period that it takes for someone to breathe, meaning they all died simultaneously. There's a famous question asked, and it has to do a lot with the current political climate in Israel, He says, why did the 10 sons of Haman have to be killed all at once? Why do you have to read the 10 sons of Haman in one breath? And he says, that the Supreme Court shouldn't come in the middle and stop them. And so they had to all be done at the same time. They all died at the same time. Rashi says, and it's brought down as well, that when you read the 10 sons of Haman, one breath, you don't start from the 10 sons of Haman, you start from the words before Chamesh Meyes Ish, 500 people. So you do the last three words over here. Chamesh Meya is 500 people, and 10 sons of Haman. Dalphon and Aspasa and Perasa and Adalia, Ridasa, Parmashta, Arisa, Arida, Vaizasa, Aseres. Why do you have to include them in 10 sons of Haman? So it's explained that the 10 sons of Haman were each Sarei Chamishin. Each of them were an officer over 50 men. So all 500 men plus the 10 sons of Haman, they were all killed. And so therefore, it's part of the miracle of the 10 sons of Haman. So we have to read it all in one breath. Now, the person hearing the Megillah, a lot of times, you can miss a word. That's why it says you should read from a Megillah inside and try reading along in order they shouldn't miss a word. It's important not to miss any part of the Megillah. And if someone, a Balkar, is reading so quickly because he wants to get through all of these words in time, and he has to read it out loud in the time that it takes for one breath, so it's possible that everyone can miss a word. So therefore, everybody before the Balkar reads this, the entire congregation reads this pasuk out loud as well.
Oh, that's why we do it. Oh.
Chaim, 50 times 500.
Correct. So there were 500 men who were killed in Shushan. 500 enemies of the Jews were killed by the Jews in Shushan. Now, why did they all have to die simultaneously at the same time? What's important for us to know about that? Maral has a sefer on the Megillah called Or Chadash. Maral of Prague says that the sons of Haman were all descendants of Amalek. Amalek, the chief, the main enemy of the Jewish people, and he hated the Jews for no reason. Just like the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed for no reason, Amalek hated the Jews for no reason whatsoever. Some people hate the Jews because they're successful, they're jealous, they're wealthy, other reasons. They hate the Jews regardless. We had earlier in the Megillah, the Jews were compared to a tail, a pile in a ditch in my field, which is just in my way. Now, Maral says the source, the reason why really the hate of the Jews, Amalek hates the Jews, is because the Jewish people, they are representing Achdos Hashem, the oneness of Hashem in the world. And Amalek cannot handle oneness. They cannot handle unity. They cannot tolerate the oneness of Hashem. If you look at the words of the Gemara over here, he says, "Shenergu b'neshima achas." Why? They were all killed at once, at the same exact moment. When they were killed, it's because there was the Jews did teshuvah, and now the oneness of Hashem was now revealed in the world. So now there's no longer any possibility for Amalek to exist, and that's why the 10 sons of Haman were killed. When they were killed at once, in one breath, and at one time, it's because they were bringing out the idea of the oneness of Hashem. So too, Haman was hung on the gallows. Haman, he's also he's from Amalek as well, and Haman wore an idol around his neck because he also cannot handle the Achdus Hashem, the oneness of Hashem. It says Mesu Ke'echad. They died as soon as there was Achdus Hashem, oneness in the world. And there was oneness in their guf, in the body, they were killed. And oneness in the neshama, in their soul, that all the Avodah Zarah, all the idol worship, which was brought about by Haman, was now abolished. So there's now one Hashem in the world, and therefore one Jewish people, and therefore there was no And therefore, all the sons of Haman were all killed at once. There's a halacha called Shemea Ka'ina. We don't have to say many words of davening. For example, Hallel. We used to not say Hallel. We just answer Hallelujah at the end. Benching, everyone will listen to benching from the from one person who benches out loud. Shemon Esrei, one person would say Shemon Esrei out loud. Everybody would listen. Shemea Ka'ina, that's a halacha. But the Chachamim, meaning if you hear, it's as if you said it. And for many things, we still do it. For example, Hagafen of Kiddush. You heard Hagafen. You don't have to make your own bracha of Hagafen. You fulfill your obligation of a bracha by the one who made the bracha out loud.
And if you have actually somebody who for some reason is he's not able to do Shemon Esrei, so let's say he came from Russia, doesn't know Hebrew, so he can actually be Yotzi actually from the from the one who leads into the davening, with the repetition of Shemon Esrei.
Correct. So the reason why we don't do it nowadays, everyone davens their own Shemon Esrei, is because nowadays, Chaim, the sages said that people are a little bit ADD. They're not able to concentrate on what they're not going to pay attention to what the Chazan is saying. So therefore, everyone has to daven themselves, Shemon Esrei and Hallel and benching, etc. and so on. In the Megillah, we hear the Megillah being read. That's enough usually, but we have to pay attention. But over here, everyone has to say the 10 sons of Haman by themselves. For some opinions say this is the reason why the 10 sons of Haman are written in very large letters. Where was it? Over here. They're written in large letters is because since everybody is reading it for themselves, and not everybody was so proficient at reading, therefore they make it in large letters. Since everybody has to read the 10 sons of Haman for themselves. Similar to, let's say, the Kiddush Levana letters of Kiddush Levana pamphlets are very large. People are reading it outside in the dark. The Rogatchover Gaon, we've brought him several times. The Tzafnas Paneach, the Rebbe received smicha from him. He's a major Gaon. So the Tzafnas Paneach, the Rogatchover writes that there's to fulfill your obligation of saying something by listening to the Chazan. For example, Megillah, you hear the Megillah and the Chazan could fulfill your obligation for you, only applies to the words of the Megillah. But the aspect of reading all the sons of Haman in one breath, that the Chazan can't do for you, can't take the breath for you. Meaning I can't eat for you, could I? No. As much as you would like to. I can't fast for you tomorrow on Tisha B'Av.
Oh, darn.
Well, that would be nice. So regarding this halacha of saying it in one breath, that cannot be done by the Chazan for you. That's why everybody has to say it themselves. And therefore, that means when you say it, you should try to say it also in one breath as well. So these are some of the reasons why the sons of Haman are all said in one breath, and everybody has to read it to themselves, and it's best if they read it quickly to themselves also in one breath. The Chassam Sofer has a beautiful pirush. We'll first do the next part of the Gemara because it connects to here. Go to the next part of the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says, Vav devayizasa sarech lemimtecha bezakifa. The vav of vayizasa. So there's 10 sons of Haman. In the Torah, you have 3 types of letters: large letters, small letters, and then you have the vast majority of average letters. And very uncommonly, will you have 2 in one pasuk or one short part, more than one large or small letter. In the 10 sons of Haman, you have 3 of them. You have a small taf, you have a small shin.
I'm having trouble spotting.
Sorry. So here's a small, the name Parshan Dasa is large enough. We should zoom in a little.
Yeah, small tough.
Small tuf of the word Parshan Dasa. in the name Parmashta, you have a small shin. And in the name Vayazasa, you have a small zayin and a large vav.
The
Right, so
question is why?
why? So the Gemara will discuss at least the long vav of Vayazasa. There is a Purim Torah. I think I mentioned this one time. The Purim Torah, this specific one, Purim Torah is when they would get usually a child or an adult who was very smart and very witty, very sharp and very quick, and he would become the rabbi of Purim. And they would put on him a shtreimel and some ridiculous clothes, and he became the rabbi of Purim. And everybody would have to ask him questions, and he would have to give a ridiculous answer he would come up with on the spot. And this was a minhag, a custom in many European towns, and there's a lot of witticisms over the years that are attributed to these Purim rabbis, the Purim rabbis. So he says, why is the vav of Vayazasa a large vav, long? So he says, he came up with an answer on the spot. He says, when Meiser Behema is giving, you have, let's say you own 10 sheep, you have to give 1 out of every 10 sheep to the Kohen. And the way it works is you take your 10 sheep, you bring them into a pen, and you let them out one by one. And the 10th sheep, you take a stick, you dip it into red dye, and you give it a smack on the back, and it gets a red mark, and that's how you know the 10th one, which has to go to the Kohen. It's called Meiser Behema. Now, the halacha is that you have to have everything in a pen, sort of like in a barn, and everything that goes out through the door one by one, every 10th one goes to the Kohen. Now, there's halacha, if it doesn't go out through the door, it does not go to the Kohen. And this is a big problem which took place in Eretz Yisrael. There are many Jews who were very wealthy and they didn't want to give meister of their sheep. So they would start conniving and making ways that they would have someone on the roof and they would have a pulley system. Every 10th one, they would pull it up over through the roof. And if it doesn't go out through the door, it's not Meiser Behema. Right? So that was and the Chaim gave them penalties that said everything they own is now hefker.
They had no fear of heaven, obviously. They're doing this.
Correct. Unfortunately, this phenomena that some people put money in front of fear of heaven is not a new phenomena. And so the Haman had 10 sons, and the Kohanim in the city of Shushan tell him, your sons, they're just like you. They're behemoths. They're animals. You got to give Meiser Behema. You got to give a 10th. You have 10 sons. You got to give one of them to the Kohen as well, because they're in the same strata as behemoths, as animals. So Haman didn't think too highly of his children, and so he says, you know what, you're right. And so his sons he puts them into a pen, and they go out one by one. Now it's the youngest son, Vayazasa, his turn to walk out.
Oh my gosh.
And suddenly, the Kohanim are all excited. We're going to get this guy. We're going to get this boy. We're going to get this kid. And Haman suddenly had fatherly compassion on him. Haman stood on the roof and tried picking them up through the roof. Kohanim didn't want to give up so fast. So they held him from the bottom, trying to schlep him down. So they stretched him out, and that's why Vayazasa has a long vav.
Well, we see an example as far as actually letters, not being straight with the others, where we have actually the Teso, Micha. So there was a Levi actually who was the Kohen, for the idol, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives actually the genealogy, right? Showing actually this false Kohen. His grandfather actually says was Menashe, but the note is hanging up.
Mm-hmm.
And so actually the reason is that really his grandfather actually was Moshe Rabbeinu. The only thing is that not to be showing a disgrace, actually the grandson who was an idol worshiper, actually they put a nun, but in order to also be truthful, they hang the nun up. So there's a reason for each little thing.
But the Gemara will have a different reason why Vayazasa has a large vav.
Okay.
A lot of times, actually, the 10 sons of Haman, they're part of Torah, and Torah lists their names. So there's different interpretations how many of these things are actually positive or good things. For example, his oldest son, Parshandasa, many times Rashi, the great Rashi, is called Parshandasa. Dasa means the law. Das is law in Hebrew. And Parshan means the explainer. So Rashi is the explainer of the Torah. It's called Parshandasa. And many of them also have positive connotations. So says the Gemara, Omer Rabbi Yochanan, says Rabbi Yochanan, Vav de Vayizasa, the Vav of the letter Vayizasa, Tzarich lemimtecha, you must stretch it out, Bizakifa, straight up high, Kimerdaya, like a pole. Has to be straight and long and a little bit bent over at the top, like a oar of a ship. Rashi in Mesechta B'Metzia calls it a certain type of oar, mordaya, which they would use in shallow rivers in order to push the ships or the boats away from any rocks, and in order to make it go like into the deepest part of the river, they would use this type of oar. So it has to be like a long steering oar of a ship, and it's to be very tall. My timer, what's the reason? Kulu b'chad zekifa is dakifu, because they were all hanged on one pole, on one gallows. If you remember, the gallows of Haman, right? Haman made a gallows that was 50 amas tall. Now Haman was hung on there in the beginning, and later on, I'm assuming 11 months later, he was taken down already, but the gallows was still standing. It didn't go anywhere. So eventually, when they came to hang Haman's 10 sons, they hung him on the same gallows that Haman was hung on.
So there was an 11th month interim between the hangings?
Right. Haman was hanged on the second day of Pesach.
Okay.
And the 13th of Adar, which is almost 11 months later, is when the sons of Haman, the sons of Haman were hung. The 14th of Adar, actually.
What was the reason for the timelines?
Because Haman had the decree against the Jews written on the day before Pesach, and already that day Mordechai already declared a fast, and 3 days later, on the third day, Haman was already invited to the feast of Esther, and the next day already he was hung. Mordechai, so right away, Haman was already hung. They didn't try spending time, wasting time. Right away, they worked on trying to abolish the decree. Already the next day, which would be probably the third day, the Mordechai is already appointed second to the king by Achashverosh, and about 3 months later, 2 months later, Chav Gimel Sivan, Mordechai is able to write his decrees that the Jews could protect themselves. But the original decree for the 13th of Adar, the Jews will be killed on the 13th of Adar, that was still in effect. And the Jews said, we're not going to attack anybody, but if we're attacked, we're going to fight back. And they got a decree from the king, they're allowed to fight back. So that was 11 months later, and the Jews had sufficient time to prepare themselves, to arm themselves with weapons, train themselves. And also they kept on fasting. Megillah says later on, they had other fasts during the year, asking Hashem to save them as well.
So I don't understand how 10 sons were hanged on one gallows.
There might be hooks on it.
So one string was a lot of.
It could be one long string, or maybe a bunch of like 10 strings next to each other.
Yeah.
Could be one under the other.
Yeah, so we don't know which one of those.
So which son was hung at which time?
No. Was it? I don't know, not that it really matters, but was it a long gallows with 10?
So the gallows. Okay, so it says that the gallows were 50 amas high.
Yeah.
Let's see here on the screen, right? It was 50 amas high.
Yeah.
And each person is an average of 3 amas tall.
Right.
3 amas is about 5.5 feet to 5.5 to 6 feet tall.
Room for 10.
So that they take up 3 amas, and there was 2 amas in between each person. So each one takes up 5 amas. So there's room for 10 people to hang one after the other. Assumingly, they're one under the other, maybe hung one from the other. Not sure.
You ever see these things that you can hang shirts in the closet? So that's that type of thing.
Now, the way we know was one gallows because when they're hung, it says al ha'etz, on the tree. It doesn't say on the trees. So it means that we understand there was one single tree, and they all came off of the central pole, not from different size. It's not like it was like a clock with like hands on each side, 10 different hands. But rather, they're all hung from the same side because it says eitz, tree, not eitzim. And Vayizasa, he would be the youngest one, and therefore, the Maharsha over here explains that Vayizasa was actually the youngest one. He was the one who was all the way on top, and the vav is long to tell you that they were hung one on top of the other, from Vayizasa all the way on the top, all the way to Parmashta, all the way on the bottom. The Chaim Sofer over here says that how is it Chaim Sofer says why is it important to us that they were all killed at one time? What's it teaching us? And the Vav of Vayizasa has to be in the shape of or what's that important to us as well? So he says, we learned in Mesechta Tainus. Some of you were here back then when we were learning Mesechta Tainus. This is closer to the beginning, Daf Tes. If you're remembering talking about different days of tragedy, calamities, talks about the day when Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on Zayin Adar. Miriam passed away in Nisan, and Aaron passed away in Av. So three of them passed away at different months. However, it said that in the month of Adar, all three, the Shlosh Roim are three shepherds, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, all passed away at once. So the Gemara asks, they all passed away at once? They passed away in 3 different months. So the Gemara answers that when Miriam passed away in the month of Nisan, the well of Miriam dried up. And the Jews complained we had no water to drink, and Moshe and Aaron brought back the water. They hit the rock and the water came back. When Aaron passed away, the clouds of glory left the Jewish people, and they came back afterwards in the merit of Moshe Rabbeinu, because they were attacked by enemies, and then the clouds came back in the merit of Moshe. So in Moshe's merit, they had the clouds, the well, and the mun as well. And when Moshe passed away, all three of them left: the clouds, the mun, and the well. So it's like they all died at once. That's what it seemed to the Jewish people. So the Chaim Sofer says that there's 10 spheres, and every one of the 10 sons of Haman represents another one of the 10 spheres. Parshan Dasa will be Chachma of Klipa, and it explains Rashi is Chachma of Kedusha, and it goes on. Every single one of them, Vayizasa, has a long vav, will be Malchus, and he explains why it's a long vav. It's the idea of coming down. So every single one of the sons of Haman, the 10 sons, represent another one of the 10 spheres of Klipa, of the forces of impurity.
In general,
in
general, when we see Ha'etz, it refers to the Eitz Hadas. Like it says, Hashem says, Min Ha'etz, did you eat? So I don't know if you saw a parish, that they were hung on the Eitz Hadas, but there are indications that Haman is name in the Torah is Haman Ha'etz, and this whole thing is kind of tied together. But I didn't know if you saw a parish that they were hung on the Eitz Hadas.
No, so right, so that's in the Gemara we had just about Mordechai, where he's hinted to in the Torah. Yes.
Excuse me. A couple notes of it.
Yes.
It said they were killed and their corpses
were hung, right?
And then another place, the soul departed at the same time.
Correct.
And so They killed all at once.
Right. So what the Chaim Sefer says, they weren't actually all killed at once. What he says is just like it says after Moshe died, it seemed that all Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam died all at once. So he says that the sons of Haman not necessarily were all killed at once, but once the last one was killed, so then it seems that they were all killed at once, because what they represented in the world, the idea of the 10 spheres of Klippa, was only accomplished after the youngest, the last one, Vaizasa, was killed. Once he was killed, then all the Klippa of Amalek, the tomb of Amalek, finally was able to be gone. So it's not, so the Chaim Sefer says, it's like by Moshe Rabbeinu, it's like they all died at once, not that they actually all died at once. That's how he explains this idea.
You could probably they killed up by the sword and then they hung them.
Right, so assuming they were killed up by the sword, then they were hung. Although we learned before, Haman had many, many sons, and so it says that there could have been two different sets of 10 sons. One set of 10 sons was killed, and one set of 10 sons was hung. That's another understanding of the Megillah.
Well, Oliver Cromwell, actually, who overthrew actually the King of England, so actually, when they had once again the monarchy, a new king, so they dug him out of the grave and they hung him as dead. It's a phenomenon where you would hang people after they're already dead.
Interesting.
So why the 3 small letters? Any explanations?
Any explanations? I don't know offhand. There is, let me go back into the Purim one. There is a homiletical explanation, which was meaning not an explanation that I know of from a source like a sefer, more like an explanation from what's commonly said in recent times. This is a tuf, this is a shin, and that's a zayin, the 3 small letters. Now, right now we're in the year Tufshin Pei Gimel 2023. The year Tufshin Zayin is a year 1947. And during that year were the Nuremberg trials, and there were 10 Nazis who were hung at that time. One other Nazi, the 11th one, was supposed to be hung as well, but he killed himself in his cell.
Herman Goering.
Herman Goering?
Yeah.
Right, so Herman Goering, he killed himself in his cell, similar to Haman's daughter, right, which she jumped off the roof from great anguish, right, when she saw what happened, and she also killed herself. So in that year, Tufshin Zayin, 1947, in the future, many millennia later, a very similar thing happened. 10 sons of Haman were killed, and 11th one killed themselves. I'm going to just conclude this part with what is over here. Just trying to find that picture. We have, here it is. I probably have to make a new share on this. Here it is. Parshandasa, Dalfa, and Aspasa. Over here is a seal, cylinder seal from the Persian period, written in Aramaic, and it carries the name of Parshandasa, son of Arsardasan. Parshandasa might have been a common Persian name, and this is what, that's the seal, and this is what the seal looks like.
Aramaic was the
It looks like a cross.
Where? This thing? No, it's like a warrior holding 2 horses.
Yeah, I see.
With
Aramaic
wings.
actually was the
But you see over here, this is a name Parshandasa.
Aramaic actually was the official
Ben
That's Hebrew.
are the son.
Actually,
Yeah.
it's like a shin. It's not.
This is
Persian.
ancient. That's a shin. This is not. This is an Aramaic,
yeah.
the language of the Gemara.
But this was from the government of Persia at the time? The
Yes.
seal?
Correct. It's possible they had different seals in different languages.
So, okay, it's Aramaic. They used Aramaic too then, obviously.
I mean, Aramaic actually was the official language of the Persian Empire because it was more widespread than any of the other actually languages of the empire. So even though actually the Persians spoke Persian, but if you want to communicate, basically you use international language over there within the empire was Aramaic.
Right. But you can see pretty much that's a pei, that's a resh, it's a shin. That looks like a daled, saf, aleph. And that's Ibn or Ben, and that's the father's name, Ardasan. Right. So but here's the name Parshandasa, one of Haman's sons. the name, see, it's a common name, and even today they found seals looking like that. Okay, it is already 12 o'clock. We're going to just maybe conclude with something really short about Tisha B'Av. Rabbi Ruddle would always say, and we saw a video of Rabbi Ruddle today digging trenches. And so Rabbi Ruddle would always say, why is it called Tisha B'Av? You're sitting on the ground, and the tish and the table is above. That's why it's called Tisha B'Av. And it's also the only Yom Tov, the only Jewish holiday which has a Manhattan street named after it. 9 Ave, if you look at the sign.
Oh, wow.
9 Ave, 9 Avenue.
Just like here, we have covered streets, you know.
We're just going to do several short, I guess, halachas and minhagim about Tisha B'Av. Today, you should learn all your shiurim, everything you want to learn, chitas, Rambam, Daf Yomi, before Chatzos, before midday today. And in Pittsburgh, Chatzos is at 1:26 p.m. So another hour and a half to learn all your chitas and Rambam and everything else you would like to learn. Also, if you want to learn about the Beis HaMikdash, before that as well. Before you daven mincha, is going to be early mincha at 7 o'clock. That's when mincha is in yeshiva today. You could eat a meal. We learned, if you remember, in Mesechta Tainus, you shouldn't eat 2 cooked dishes by the meal. And it's talking about the final meal before Tisha B'Av. But after midday, if you're going to have a second meal, then you could eat more than 2 cooked dishes. 2 cooked dishes and more by your meal. So before mincha, you eat a large meal. After mincha, we eat a sudas mafsekes, a meal which has only 1 cooked dish, which is traditionally boiled egg, water, and we make ashes, and you dip the bread and the egg into ashes. We don't say Tachnun today by mincha, and we don't say Tachnun the entire Tisha B'Av, because Tisha B'Av was during the times of the second Beis HaMikdash, it was a Yom Tov, and once again it will be a Yom Tov. And it says Mashiach as well was born on Tisha B'Av. By the final meal, we only drink water. But if you want to drink a coffee or a tea, that's considered to be water in this regard.
I got a quick question.
Yes.
No leather, correct?
No
wearing leather.
Right. No wearing leather from sundown, from after the sun goes down
Tonight. And also. Tomorrow, no tefillin, right?
In the morning.
But we have tefillin by mincha.
Right.
Tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah.
Right. Although I can say when I was in Venice, Italy, if you meet someone, the only time they're going to put on tefillin is in the morning. They could do it in the morning, obviously. And we put on tefillin, I could say, with hundreds of people, Tisha B'Av morning. That's because people that you meet on the street or that are passing through, and they wouldn't put on tefillin later.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, we put on tefillin with many people, but we put on tefillin. Many people have a custom to sleep on the ground or to put a rock under their head. That is not a minhag of Chabad. It's not the custom of Chabad. Learning Chassidus, there's plenty of Chassidus to learn about the Eicha, the Megillah Eicha, or about the destruction, or about Tisha B'Av. Making a siyum on Tisha B'Av, we only do on either Mesechta Moed Katan, which talks a lot about mourning, or on Mesechta Smachos. There was yesterday a Pinyin Haben, and somebody said that's the first time he ever heard a bracha Shechiyanu being made during the 9 days. We make a Shechiyanu by the Pinyin Haben.
Who had the Pinyin Haben? Anybody we know?
Yeah, Rabbi, one of the Weinstein grandchildren.
Nice.
Now, saying Tanya seems like you could say your Tanya, your daily Tanya tomorrow, maybe after Chatzos, after midday. Tilim and Chumash could be learned after Chatzos, after midday. And we say Tilim, daily Tilim, we say it usually when we're putting on Tefillin. But Rambam, daily Rambam, we only learn after the day is over. So Matzei Tisha B'Av. And it could be, it's a little bit longer if you're learning 3 prakim, but we only do it after Tisha B'Av. There's a custom of Chabad, is that after midday, we read once again to ourselves Megillah Eicha. And is, of course, a custom that since we're not eating, it's called Igrisa de Tanesa. You're not going to be eating food. That doesn't mean you're saving money. Instead the money you would have spent on food, you should give to tzedakah. It's called Igrisa de Tanesa, the value of the meals that you're saving because of the fast. And when you put on talis tefillin, make sure to do with a bracha. Many people slips their mind because we're not accustomed to putting on Rashi in the afternoon. So a lot of people, when they put on the Rashi tefillin and they start saying Shir Shal Yoim and continuing, but it's important to remember to say Shema, Kriya Shema in your tefillin, in your Rashi tefillin. And of course, there's Anenu and there's everything else. This year, since Tisha B'Av is on a Thursday, so Friday is already Erev Shabbos, so many of the things which you're strict in until midday on the day after Tisha B'Av, we're not strict on this year. Things you're allowed to do, for example, cutting your nails and even getting a haircut, you can already do from sunrise on Friday. Usually you wait till after midday.
No, but eating meat.
What?
No, but
eating meat, we wait till midday, the day after Tisha B'Av. We don't eat meat, till midday after Tisha B'Av.
It's the same.
Yes, eating meat and listening to music, we wait till after Tisha B'Av.
How about wine?
What? The same thing. Wine you don't do. Even this past Motzei Shabbos, you're not. If you're able to get like a minor, someone under bar bas mitzvah to drink your wine for Abdullah, you're supposed to do that.
If you don't have actually beer or something, you can actually then do in wine.
Correct. If there's no one else, you're allowed to make it on wine. You don't have to make it on beer.
Okay.
Because wine is the best. It's a chaviv. It's the best way of doing it. But my kids were very thrilled. They got to stay up for Abdullah. And each one get a whole cup of grape juice. They were very happy about it this past Motzei Shabbos. And it's interesting, on Tisha B'Av, there were times that the Rebbe said that everyone should travel around to different shuls, because people are in shuls on Tisha B'Av, and to speak in public about the idea of Mi Yehudi, what's happening in Eretz Yisrael and Israel, with saying who is a Jew, and that a Jew can only be somebody who is according to halacha, and everyone should do whatever they can about it. Obviously, all the good things we added on in 3 weeks shouldn't finish at the end of the 3 weeks, but they should continue it afterwards as well. Be already Mashiach. Now we shouldn't have a fast as a Saturday. It should already be revealed. The happy